We return again to our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript tutorial series, focusing just on the skills needed to find a job. And in it, we delve into the narrative of the Life is Strange 2 video game and explore the experience the developers have created on the website. We'll look at the design of the web app, the story the developers are trying to tell, and the elements used to convey it. You know, I really love helping people get high-paying tech jobs by trying to make it as unintimidating as possible, but spending time that I would otherwise spend working to pay my rent costs me money. And while I don't mind paying that out of my own savings to do this, it would be absolutely fantastic to offset these costs. So if you want to support and allow me the time to think of ways to help others feel less intimidated by tech, there's a link to my Patreon below. But please, don't feel bad if you can't though. Leaving a simple comment can help in a huge way as well. The Life is Strange 2 trailer places us back where we left off with Sean and Daniel. The two brothers wind their way through sprawling forests and towering mountains, the endless expanse of the road stretching out before them. The roar from the engines of passing cars and unnerving hum from the tires rolling across the asphalt fill their ears as they slowly make their way southward down the state highway. As the sun makes its way across the lush Oregon forest canopy, the brothers gravitate towards the shaded side of the road, the towering trees providing the only source of welcomed relief from the scorching sun beating down with unrelenting intensity on their faces. Sean and Daniel's cross-country journey is quickly turning out to be fraught with challenges that would test even the most tenacious of travelers. The themes of the game reflecting in the characters' struggles to prevail over the strange and unexpected challenges they come across. The Life is Strange 2 logo design gives us a visual reminder of that. Back on our app screen, we already have a watch trailer button, but I think it would be nice to add the second Buy Now button, the Life is Strange 2 logo, and the background image on the page. So let's start with the Buy Now button first. Just like before, we'll go to our homepage.html file on the left, and just below the watch trailer button, we can put our second button. So we'll just start by typing button and press enter. In between the tags again, we'll add the text we want our button to show on it. So we can just type in Buy Now. When we save, we see our new button show up on the screen. The problem is, we want our Buy Now button to be yellow and our Watch Trailer button to stay black. But in our homepage.css file, if we change the background color for our button from black to yellow, both buttons change. Man, it would probably be nice to be able to select a specific button and just change that one, right? Now, there's something really useful in HTML that helps us classify any of our tags or elements on the page with different labels. It's something called a class, and it will let us give a special name to our button. And they're really easy to add. All we have to do is go to our homepage.html file, and in our button tag, we can just press space to give ourselves some room, then just type the word class, press enter, and in between these quotation marks, write whatever class name we want to give each button. And since this can be any name we want, let's just call this one Watch Trailer with a dash in between. In our new one, Buy Now. Back in our homepage.css file, now we can actually select those two buttons separately. Before, we just wrote the name of the tag we wanted to select, like button, to change the color. And for classes, just like when we selected tags, we'll do the same thing. The only difference is we'll add a dot before the name to show it's a class. So to select our Watch Trailer class, we can write a dot and then just add the name of our class, which I believe was Watch Trailer with a dash in between. Great. So we've selected our Watch Trailer button, right? And now inside these squiggly brackets, we can change the color here. So let's remove our color and background color from our button tag selector that selects all of our buttons, and instead put it just on our watch trailer button. And we'll notice that our watch trailer button is black and white now. So let's do the same with our buy now button. We can press enter to go to the next line. And since we want to select another class again, we'll first type a dot and then the name of the class. And it looks like we named it buy now with a dash in between. So now inside these squiggly brackets again, we'll add our colors. On the Life is Strange 2 website, their background color is yellow and the color of the text is black. So let's save it again to see our changes. And it's certainly yellow now, but it has a black border around the edges. And that's weird, we didn't add that. Turns out our browsers add some properties to everything by default. Buttons are one of them. The good news is we can reset these defaults pretty easily. And I like to put this at the top of my file in CSS, but you can put it wherever you want. Instead of writing a name to select a specific tag like a button, we can add another selector like before, but this time select every tag on the page. The way we do this is with the star symbol on our keyboards. And that's it. Now we're selecting every tag on the page. So in our squiggly brackets again, we can remove the default borders by setting border to none, like this. And now when we save, we see that our black border has disappeared. Okay, so we have these two buttons, but now is where our app will really start to take shape. So let's add the area where our background image will be. And many times when we're building apps, it's really helpful if we kind of like divide the app up into different sections. And there's no right or wrong way to divide it up, but we can think of this area with our background image as like a larger divided section. And inside of this divided section, we have smaller divided sections, don't we? We can divide this up into smaller sections like the part with our buttons at the bottom and the part with our logo at the top. And dividing it up like this will give us more control over like the spacing and positions of different things we put on the screen. We can divide it up with a new tag we haven't used yet called a div. So in our HTML file, let's try doing that by creating a section where our background image will go in this top area with a div tag. So inside the body tag, let's just start writing the letters div and press enter. VS Code will make an opening and closing tag for us like before. And just because we'll probably be making many div tags to divide our app up, let's give this one a class in case we want to select it later. So we can call it top section with a dash in between. Cool, so we made a div tag that will hold everything in this top section on the page. Since our buttons are inside this top section too, let's just move these inside as well. Now, let's save and head over to our CSS file to change what this div tag for our top section looks like. Let's select just that section specifically with its class name. So once again, we'll write a dot to show we're selecting a class and then top section with a dash in between. Now that we've selected it, inside the squiggly brackets, let's just change the background color to gray for now. And in our app, we can see our top section in gray going all the way across the screen. So it does have the width we want, but we probably want to add some more height to match the top area of the Life is Strange 2 website. And CSS has a property for that too called height. So we'll add that. But although we could set it to some height in pixels like 100, we don't know how tall everyone's screen who looks at our app is going to be. So instead, it would probably make more sense to try to set it to a percentage of the whole screen. Some people call the screen a viewport. But the way we do that is with something called viewport height, or VH. This is just the percentage of the screen we want our height to take up. So to see how that works, let's start out with 100 view heights. Now when we save it, we see that it's taking up our entire screen. And comparing it to their website, that's a bit too much. So let's try something like 90 view hertz. Okay, cool. So that looks a lot closer to theirs. And now we have the top section for our app. We probably want to move these buttons to the center though. And there's a really handy property that we can use to center everything in a section called Align Items. So let's try that out on our top section here. We'll just write Align Items with a dash in between and set it to center. Now this is a special property that works only when we set Display to Flex. And don't worry too much about what this display property does yet. Just know, hey, it lets us use things like Align Item Center. And when we save, we see our buttons are now centered on the screen. But we also see that Flex has used Align Items to center our buttons in the wrong direction. No worries, we can easily change this by adding a Flex Direction property and changing it from the default of row to column. Now that everything in our top section is centered the way we want, let's add the logo to it as well. And the logo is just an image, so we can add it to our folder similarly to how we added our HTML and CSS files. And I've added the link to the image under this video in the description. Just look for Life is Strange 2 logo, open it, and right-click the image to save it, and select the folder of the app we're making as the place we want to save it. Now to add it to the page, it's really similar to how we've added other things to our app. So let's hop back over to our homepage.html file, and inside the top section, we'll add an image tag. We can just start typing the letters IMG and press enter. We just have to tell the computer where to find the source of the image. And since we put it in the same folder, we can just write the name of our image file and press enter. Nice. So we've added our image, and just because we'll probably add more images to our site later, let's give it a class. We can call it, I don't know, logo for now. Right now, our background is just a gray color, but it would be cool to make this the actual background image of the site. So let's do the same as we did earlier and download that one from the link in the description below this video too, and save it to our folder. Usually to add images, we use image tags, but for background images, CSS has an easy way for us to add them and control the way they look. So over in our CSS file, let's go back to the top section selector. Instead of having this background color property, let's switch that out with a new one called background image, and we'll set it to the path or URL of where we saved our image. To do this, we just start writing the letters URL and press enter. And since our image file is in the same folder, inside of these parentheses, we can just write the name of our file. When we click save, we'll see our background has now changed from the gray color we had before to our new background image. We'll probably want the image to be centered so we can see the two boys in it. So we can use the background position property and set it to center. And just to make sure that it's sizing the image correctly, we can use background size and set it to cover. Awesome. So this top section is starting to feel like a real app now. So let's put some space between our two smaller sections, the logo and the buttons. In our top section selector, we can do this really easily since we are already set display to flex here with a new property called justify content. We already centered everything horizontally, and we could use justify content to similarly center everything vertically too, but we want to have some space in between our two sections, so we can set it to space between like this. Now it has spread everything out with space in between each section. But instead of having three things here like we do now, it would probably make sense to group these buttons together, so we just have two sections. So let's try that. In our HTML file, let's just add a new div in our top section and put these buttons inside of it and give it a class. Let's call it buttons. Nice. So we have spaces between just two sections like we wanted, our logo and the buttons. Now our new div has the buttons going in the wrong directions though, so we can just select it in CSS and change the flex direction to column. That's right. And because we're using flex, we need to set display to flex too. Okay, so all that's left is pushing these things away from the top and bottom towards their correct positions. So let's start with the logo. And since we gave a class to our image tag with the logo in it, let's select it by writing a dot and then the name of the class. And it looks like we named it logo. Now, all we want to do is move its position relative to where it is now. So inside the squiggly brackets, we can set position to relative, and this will let us move it away from where it is now. Then all that's left is deciding how much we're moving it away from the top. So let's try setting top to 100 pixels. So finally, we'll just do the same thing with the buttons. So let's find our buttons class selector, and just like before, we'll set position to relative and choose how much we want to move it away from the bottom. So let's try setting bottom to 100 pixels as well. Okay, so we have made really good progress, like a ton of progress, and there are just two small things that might be bothering us now. The first is that we're missing a gap in between these two buttons. Another cool thing that display flex lets us do is use the gap property to put a gap between everything in that section. So let's just add the gap property and try setting it to 20 pixels. Okay, so now the second small thing that might be bothering us is this extra space or margin around the top section. And just like the border around the buttons from before, this is another default property that we can reset in our special CSS selector that selects everything on the page, remember? So in there, let's just add both the margin and padding properties and set them both to 0 pixels. So you're probably wondering, what is margin, what is padding, and what is the difference between them? Now the difference between margin and padding is that padding is the space on the inside, like how we added padding to the inside of our buttons. And margin is the space on the outside, like the extra margin we had on the outside of the top section before we removed it. And that is it. Our top section is looking pretty good, if I do say so myself. We have a few small things to add in addition, but it's actually starting to look like a real app now. And in the next part of the series, we'll work on actually putting in the trailer video and using a bit of JavaScript as well. As usual, I'll put a link in the description to similar videos of my own, as well as those of other creators. They helped me quite a bit.